The modern world glorifies stupidity. That's something that Nietzsche recognized already over 100 years ago. And it seems like since then, things have only gotten worse. The rise of social media has brought with it a new kind of person, the influencer, whose entire brand is based on being vapid and superficial. And these people often get more popular than those who are actually talented or intelligent, because intelligence is intimidating and honesty is inconvenient. But stupidity is celebrated. Why? Well, because it's relatable. When I first read Nietzsche's Twilight of the Idols, I was struck by how prescient he was about the kind of culture that we now live in. In this short book, written shortly before his descent into madness, Nietzsche attacks the culture of his time for its growing mediocrity and its inability to deal with the radical ideas of his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He argues that the masses can't handle the truth, so instead, they prefer to surround themselves with comforting lies. And one of the most egregious lies that he sees around him is the lie of equal value, the idea that everyone's opinion is as good as everyone else's. Now, Nietzsche was no fan of democracy. He thought that the masses were incapable of making their own decisions. So he certainly wasn't advocating for majority rule. But he also wasn't advocating for an aristocracy of the intellect. He didn't think that the smart people should rule over the dumb people. What he wanted was an aristocracy of character. His criticism wasn't of intelligence as such, but of the herd mentality that he saw among the intellectuals of his day. They had all the trappings of intelligence, but their intelligence was purely theoretical. It was divorced from life and from any real attempt to grapple with the problems that they were confronted with. They were what we might call today the intelligentsia. And Nietzsche thought that these people couldn't really be trusted to say anything true or honest, because what would happen is that they would cater to the lowest common denominator. They would pander to the herd. They would avoid saying anything that might offend anyone so that they could continue to be liked and accepted by the masses. And so Nietzsche argued that the only way to produce anything truly valuable was for an artist or a philosopher to go beyond good and evil, to speak the uncomfortable truths that others were too afraid to speak. This is why he said that only the madman can speak the truth, because only the madman is beyond good and evil. The sane people are trapped within the prison of conventional morality, and they are too afraid to say anything that might break the rules. But Nietzsche recognized that most people don't want to hear the truth. They want to be flattered. They want to be told what they want to hear. And so they will always prefer the comfort of a lie to the harsh light of truth. That's why he said that we should have illusions, because if we didn't, we'd all go insane. Nietzsche was a pessimist. He recognized the terrible state of human affairs. He saw the suffering and the injustice and the cruelty of the world. And he knew that if people really understood the world, if they really understood how futile and absurd it all was, they would be overwhelmed with despair. So he thought it was better to have illusions, to have hopes and dreams that might never come true, because at least that way, people could go on living. Of course, there's a difference between the intentional telling of comforting lies and the unintentional self-deceptions that we all indulge in from time to time. Sometimes it's just easier to believe that the world makes sense, even when we know that it doesn't, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to function. We couldn't get out of bed in the morning. Nietzsche recognized this too. That's why he said that we should have illusions, because otherwise we'd all go insane. But the problem is, when the telling of comforting lies becomes an industry, when there's an entire class of people whose job it is to manufacture fake dreams and then profit from selling them to the masses. That's what Nietzsche was getting at when he criticized the intellectual yet Jung philosopho. They were the dream merchants. They sold fake dreams to the masses. And the worst part of it was that they didn't even believe in the dreams that they were selling. They were just peddling them to make a buck. And this is where we get to the root of Nietzsche's critique of the modern world. For Nietzsche, the telling of fake dreams was just a symptom of a much deeper problem, which was the problem of nihilism. Nihilism is the belief that life is meaningless, and Nietzsche thought that modern culture was becoming increasingly nihilist. The problem with nihilism is that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe that life is meaningless, then you'll start to live your life in a way that makes it meaningless. You'll indulge in every base and selfish desire because why shouldn't you? Life is meaningless anyway. There's no point to it, so you might as well do whatever you want. And that's what Nietzsche saw happening in the modern world. People were becoming increasingly selfish and base because they had given up on the meaning of life. They had embraced nihilism. And so for Nietzsche, the only way to overcome nihilism was to reject the comfortable lies that made it possible and to embrace the uncomfortable truths that made life worth living. Of course, not everyone wants to hear the truth. Most people would rather live in ignorance. But that doesn't mean that we should stop trying to tell it. That's why Nietzsche said that only the madman can speak the truth, because only the madman is beyond good and evil. The rest of us are not madmen, but we should strive to be. We should learn to see the world as it really is, and then we should have the courage to speak the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be.